Welcome back to another Sunday School Bible class. Today we are on a lesson entitled Joshua and the Walls of Jericho.
We have been learning how the Israelites had rebelled and disbelieved God over 10 times since God brought them out of Egypt, despite all the mighty miracles that God showed them. As a result, they had to wander in the wilderness for 40 years until all that adult generation died, and then a new generation entered the Promised Land. Before they entered the Promised Land, Moses went over all of the laws and commandments that God gave him and warned the people that they had to obey God's laws and commandments or they would have a lot of trouble in their new land. Before Moses died, God chose Joshua to be the next leader and to bring the Israelites into the land of Canaan. Moses told all the people that Joshua was to be their next leader and they were to respect and obey him. Moses then went up to the mountain, and God showed Moses the promised land from the mountain, and then Moses died. In this week's lesson, we will learn what happened when the new generation went into the promised land. God spoke to Joshua and told him that he would be with him the way he was with Moses, but that Joshua must study the laws of God and think about them day and night. God promised Joshua that if he studied and obeyed the laws of God, that he would prosper and win every battle and Israel would become a great nation. One of the first cities Joshua had to conquer is a city named Jericho. Jericho was a city that was completely surrounded by big, high, thick walls. No one could conquer this city because of these big walls. Now when the Canaanites who were in that city heard that the Israelites were coming, they were really scared because they had heard all the miracles God had done for the Israelites and how he defeated the entire Egyptian army by drowning them in the sea. The people of Jericho therefore decided that they would shut the gates of the city so that the Israelite army could not get inside the city. However, before the Israelite army marched toward the city, Joshua instructed 2 men to go into the city as spies to see what the city was like so they knew what to attack when the army got there. While these spies were in the city, some of the soldiers of Jericho heard that 2 spies of Israel were in their city, so they began to search every house looking for these 2 Israelite spies. There was a woman in the city named Rahab who heard what God did for the Israelites and knew that their God was the one true God, and she believed in him. So Rahab helped the Israelite spies and hid them on the roof of her house so that when the soldiers came to her house, they did not find the spies. Rahab knew that their God was going to destroy their city and that the Israelites were going to conquer their city because she knew their God could do anything. Rahab had faith in the God of Israel. She asked the spies to remember her and her family and spare them when they attacked the city of Jericho, and the spies agreed. They promised Rahab that if she would put a red or a scarlet rope in her window, they would instruct the army of Israel to spare the house with the scarlet rope and not kill the people in that house when they attacked the city. Then Rahab let them down by a rope through the window, for her house was upon the wall of Jericho. They escaped out of the city when no one was watching, and the 2 Israelite spies went back to the camp of Israel. Upon the return of the 2 spies, God spoke to Joshua in the camp of Israel and gave him instructions as to how they were to attack the city of Jericho. God promised if they obeyed his instructions exactly, he would destroy the walls, and when he did, they were to go into Jericho and attack and conquer the city. Joshua instructed all the people of the army and warned them that they were to follow God's instructions exactly, or else they would lose the battle. As instructed, the priests carried the Ark of the Covenant upon their shoulders, and as they led the entire army toward the city of Jericho, they came to the river Jordan, which was overflowing its banks because it was at flood stage at that time of the year. The priests were instructed to walk right up to the edge of the river. As soon as their feet touched the water, the river stopped flowing, so that there was dry ground right where they were, and the entire nation of Israel passed through this dry riverbed, while the priests holding the Ark of the Covenant stood there in the middle of the riverbed. Joshua commanded 12 men to take 12 stones from the riverbed and bring them to the other side to make a pillar as a memorial for all future generations to tell them what God did. After everyone passed over to the other side, Joshua commanded the priests to come out, and as soon as their feet touched the ground on the other side, the river resumed flowing again. Then the men made a pillar of stones, and Joshua told all the Israelites that they were to tell their children for years to come what God did for them. The Israelites then encamped at Gilgal and celebrated the Passover in their camp, and the day after that, the manna stopped, so they no longer ate the bread that God provided, but began to eat the food that was growing in the land. Sometime after this, it was time to attack Jericho, and the priests and all the people had to follow God's instructions exactly. Now the priests with all the people behind them blew with the trumpets as they all marched around the walls of the city in complete silence, while the people in the city watched on the walls, wondering what they were doing. Then Israel left and went back to camp. They did the same thing for the next 5 days. The people of Jericho wondered what they were doing because they did the same thing for 6 days and then left. On the 7th day, although it looked like the same thing was going to happen, Israel marched around the walls not 1 time like before, but 7 times without a word. Then Joshua shouted for all the people to shout because God had given the city into their hands. They obeyed, and sure enough, the walls crumbled and collapsed, and the Israelites marched right into the city and defeated the Canaanites just as God said they would. When they came to the house that had the red or scarlet rope in the window, they did not attack the people of that house. That was Rahab's house, since she was the one that helped the spies. Rahab and her family came out, and Joshua told them that they were welcome to be part of the Israelites. Eventually, Rahab, with her faith in the God of Israel, married one of the Israelite men and became a believer and worshiped the God of Israel. All that was needed to live was to believe in the God of Israel, and the Canaanites would have all lived. God always honored anyone who believed in him. In our next lesson, we're going to find out what happened to the Israelites once they got into the land of Canaan. You don't want to miss these next lessons. See you next time. Bye-bye.